Hello and welcome to another video from me, Rough Swordsman Wargamer. It's another in the Play It Safe series, but this one's a little different, as you'll see in a moment. It is in fact Red Menace, a game designed by Brent Ward and published by Battlespace Games. Why is it in the Play It Safe series? Well, this is in fact the print and play version, and the reason I'm using the print and play version is this game is quite difficult to get here in the UK, not sure about Europe, and it's not free. This isn't a free download, but the cost is only $7.50, which is just over £6 at the time of videoing, and is available from wargamevault.com. And I thought for $7.50 it was worth a go. So we've printed it out and we'll see how we get on. This, as you can see, says World War III in 1959. Great picture there. This is a solitaire game where you play the Allies, the US, Canadians, and of course the Brits against a Soviet onslaught. This isn't a complicated game. It's not heavy. It mainly focuses on bombers. Soviets are trying to bomb your cities, you're trying to stop them, and you're trying to bomb their cities and they're trying to stop you. So as you can see here, it's made up of three sort of main components. We've got the map, and then the Allies have got their strategic bomber deployment charts over here, and here's all the Soviet bomber flights on this chart. Let's have a quick look at the counters. So along the top here we've got the bombers, it says bomb there, and on the counter we've got what sort of bomber it is, what country it comes from, and some numbers down the bottom here. M is movement, so this bomber can in fact move 2 hexes per turn. Normally though, bombers can only move 1 hex. Range is normally 0, so the bomber has to be over the target, over the city. Although there are some bombers that have a range of 1 and can release their bombs 1 hex away from their target. A is their attack value, and this is the value or greater it has to throw to successfully drop its bombs. And D is its defense against the interceptors. Normally it's 0, but some of them do have a -1. Down here are the interceptors with their name and country they represent. They don't have a movement because usually interceptors defend cities, so they have a range of 0. However, there are some that have a range of 1 and can attack bombers 1 hex away. And A is their attack value that they have to throw or greater to destroy the bombers. There are also counters that don't start in the beginning of the game but will enter when a certain random event card is drawn. Here we've got the arrow interceptor for the Canadians. It's got a low attack roll, which is good, and has a range of 0 and 1. The Su-9 is a similar thing, similar interceptor for the Soviets. Attack of 3, range 0, 1. The Soviets also have the M50, which has a normal movement of 2, an attack of 3 and a defense of -1. The Soviets and the Americans both have airborne early warning aircraft and give bonuses to the side that has them. And here we have the KC-135, which is a fueling aircraft, and that allows the Allied bombers to move 2 hexes instead of just the 1. Here are some other types of counters. The Allies have a nuclear submarine, the USS George Washington, which can, if it gets into range, fire its missiles onto Soviet cities. For added protection, both sides have some surface-to-air missiles. We've got the SA-2 here for the Soviets. We've got the Bloodhound for the Brits, and the Nike for the Americans. This counter here is to represent groups of 3 bombers that are making their way towards the target. Has 2 reasons, I suppose. One is to keep the map clutter free, because every turn the Soviets will launch 1 or 2, depending on the scenario, flights, groups of 3 bombers, and that will soon clutter up the map. But also, it's to hide what bombers are advancing, and we won't know what's in that group of bombers until a couple of things happen, one of which is they land on or pass the dew line, which we'll have a look at in a minute. And this counter here is what is drawn randomly from a cup when there is a successful bombing of a city, regardless of the side, and represents victory points. Let's have a look at the map. Here's the map where the Allies and Soviets track the movement of their bombers, and also any interceptions that take place. Up the top there is the Soviet Union. We've got the polar ice cap here, Greenland. Here's Britain, and down here, of course, Canada and the US. Let's have a look up the top there. Here we are up in the Soviet Union, and you can see that the Soviet cities are represented on the map with a number, and these are the targets for the Allies. On some of the hexes you can see this AD and a number, and these are the Soviet air defense hexes. If an Allied bomber moves into one of these hexes, there's a chance that there's a Russian SA-2 SAM site there, and will of course attack the bomber. Here we can see some sort of red chevrons, and this means that if a Russian bomber is travelling down this way, it has to turn in and follow these arrows before it can go down again, and the same here. This, I understand, is to represent the curvature of the Earth. The only exception to that is that if a Soviet bomber group is targeting London, they can come straight down. These icons here are the Russian anti-submarine warfare icons, and if the American sub is on one of these when a certain event takes place, and we'll have a look at the random event deck in a moment, there's a bigger chance that that sub is destroyed. Moving down, we can see the polar ice cap, and here is actually where the submarine will start the game, and it will fire Polaris missiles when in range of Soviet cities, but it can only do that when it is in one of these hexes with the Polaris icon. Here's the dew line, D1 to D6, the distant early warning line, and if one of these counters lands on or crosses it, the makeup of that group of 3 bombers is revealed. And here is Greenland. Moving down, we come to the United States and Canada. These are the Canadian cities, and of course the US. New York and Washington DC are in the same hex, as you can see, but they are treated as separate targets. So if one gets nuked, it gets one of these drawn randomly, and if the other one gets nuked, another one is drawn. So this can have up to 2 of those counters on it. And right at the bottom we see Cuba. Cuba doesn't start the game, but a random event card may well bring them into the war. We're not allowed, as the Allies, to bomb Cuba until that happens. And that's the map. Here's the strategic bomber deployment chart for the Allies. Down here we have all the cities that are eligible for bombers. There are no Canadian cities there because the US aren't allowed to base their bombers there. And what will happen when we start the game, we'll set up as per the scenario, and then we'll fill up cities with up to 3 bombers. And this is where you track where your bombers are leaving. And then if they are successful, they can return to one of these cities to try again. Down here, we've got the points or victory points track. We need a couple of cubes. Red for the Soviets, blue for the Americans. And that's how we track how many victory points. In this particular scenario, it's the first to reach 50 victory points. Here's where we keep the interceptors, the US, Canadian and UK interceptors. They will all start ready, and we'll see that in a moment. I mentioned earlier the airborne early warning and aerial refueling aircraft. They don't actually go on the map. They go here if they are launched by a random event card, and then we choose which airbase they are based at. And we have to do that because if that airbase gets destroyed or nuked, we lose that aircraft. Here's where we track how many Polaris missiles the US submarine has. Normally starts with 2, but there is again a random card which may push it up to 3. And here it says movement. The sub can only move twice, and that's it. So we've got to be a bit careful how we move it, get it into the best position to fire its Polaris missiles. And down here is a handy little sequence of play, or turn phases as they call it. And here's the Soviet flights chart. Here we keep a record of the Soviet bombers, and on the left hand side there you can see the letters which will correspond to these tokens here. If I can get it in focus, there we are. The next column says AB number, and that's was its home city that it left from. Next one says bombers, and that's where we will draw, because we draw these randomly, the 3 bombers that make up that flight. And here we've got primary, secondary and tertiary targets. And we'll see how the Soviet bombers are given their targets and where they actually originate from later on. Over here we've got the Soviet sub-attack. Now they do actually have a sub themselves. There isn't a counter for it. It's again a random event, and if that is drawn, we roll and see which city has been nuked. And in the scenario we are playing, the Soviet sub gets a chance at first strike at one of our cities if it throws, I believe, a 5 or more. So that's no good at all. Down here we can see if Cuba comes in, that's where we'll place the bombers there, and the M50 that I showed you earlier. Here's where the Soviet airborne early warning aircraft goes, and again we have to roll to see which city it's based at, and if it gets destroyed, the airborne early warning aircraft gets destroyed as well. Down here is a little table we use. If one of the Soviet flights' primary target has been destroyed, we roll on that and see if we can get them a secondary or even a tertiary target. And here, like on the other chart, is where we're going to keep the Soviet interceptors. They start ready, and if they come in, the Cuban aircraft. A point to note is that there is a bit of writing, and we have to write on this because we have to make a note of the city the Soviet bomber flights originated from. We have to make a note of the primary and maybe the secondary and tertiary targets. And that's done with a dry white pen. Not a problem for me because I've put this under plexi and I can just wipe it off afterwards, but bear that in mind. There's a bit of writing on these charts. Okay, let's have a look at the scenario. Just to let you know, I don't think I've mentioned it yet, this is the 2nd edition, and I think there's some rule changes and differences from the 1st edition. So, having said that, We are doing Soviets on the do line. There is a setup procedure in the rules, but these are in addition to it. And it says here we've got flights A, B, C and D. They start airborne. And this tells us where they're originating from. So we'll do that first. Flight A starts on D2 here, so let's zoom in a bit. Flight B for the Soviets starts on D3, C on D4, and D, I believe, is above D3. In the scenario instructions, it tells you what their airbase is and their primary target. So let's do that. Flight A originates from airbase number 9. And its primary target is R. Los Angeles. Flight B is coming from number 6. Tixi. Hope I'm getting these pronunciations right. And their primary target is I. Washington DC. And Flight C is originating from 2. Leningrad. And their primary target is also I. Washington DC. Flight D comes from 5. Norilsk. And that's targeting E. Edmonton. Now, because flight A, B and C are actually on the do line, we can now reveal what their makeup is. And we do that by randomly picking them from a cup, which all the bombers are in. However, it does say flights A and C have one of those Tu-95Ks. They've got a range of 1, so we must remember that. So we'll pick another 2 for those. Not looking. There we are. M4 and a Tu-95. We do the same quickly for B. Just pick out 3, there we are. And 2 more for flight C. There we are. M4. Tu-16, beg your pardon. Okay, D isn't revealed because it's not on the do line yet. We have to wait until that one moves. The next scenario, special instructions if you like, is that the US can launch 5 airborne bombers in US or Greenland. Now the stacking limit for Greenland in this scenario is 1, so we'll have a look at that. We've got 3 B-58s which have a movement of 2, so we might as well move them. We'll put one here in Thule in Greenland, one in Anchorage, well, I think we'll put 2 in Anchorage, that's the nearest cities to the Soviets. And then to finish off, a couple of B-52s. There are no stacking limits when bombers are flying, so we'll take that into consideration. Let's put 2 in Omaha. Now again, you'll play this differently, but there we go. Now, in addition, we can launch one of the British V bombers, and we've got the Valiant, the Victor, and my favourite, the Vulcan, and this is chosen randomly. We throw a D6, and that tells us which one we're going to have. 6. Oh, and that's the Vulcan. So the Vulcan is airborne. That's it for the scenario setup. The rest of the setup is done as per the rules, and that includes placing for the Allies an F-106 interceptor on any US city. So we'll place it here in Omaha. This surface-to-air missile can be placed in any non-city hex. So maybe here. And there's another one which is designated DC, and so goes here. For the Brits, we've got a Bloodhound surface-to-air missile, so that obviously goes in London. And the Americans have their USS George Washington, which starts here. For the Russians, there are 2 units that protect Moscow. Tu-28, which has a range of 0 and 1, and an SA-2 SAM site. There we are. Over here, we've placed the rest of the bombers in their air bases. We can place up to 3 per air base, but we mustn't have more than 2 types of bomber. And down here, the V bombers can only be assigned, of course, to London. Here we've placed all the interceptors in the ready boxes of their countries, and the US submarine has 2 Polaris missiles available. For the Russians, we've placed their available interceptors in their ready box. Up at the top here, you can see there are some counters that will come into play through the random event deck, and this has a variety of random events, some good, some bad. And we'll give that a shuffle. There we are. And here is the Soviet city deck, which will tell us whereabouts the Soviet flights are leaving from and what their primary target is. We throw a D6 and look up on here. So we give that a shuffle. And that goes over there. I think we're ready. Sorry about the glare, by the way. So every turn we look down the turn phases and follow that, but if you remember, in this scenario the Russians are going to try and attempt to launch a missile from their submarine, and on a roll of 5 or more on a D6 they are successful. Let's see. Oh no! It's a 5. So now we look over here at this table and we throw another D6 and see which city they have just nuked. It is number 2. It is Thule, which is here. So we draw one of these out of the cup to see how much damage they've caused, and that's the amount of victory points they get. Oh crikey, it's a 1d6. Luckily this isn't affected because it's in the air, so we throw 1d6 and see how many victory points they get. It's 3, so what I do is place that on top. Give the Soviets 3 victory points. And now we start the game proper. Good grief. Luckily we didn't have, because it's Greenland, we couldn't rebase there to start. So here we go. First random event. Launch US airborne early warning. Good. That is going to be launched here. So we get the early warning EC 121. That goes on here. And we have to give it an air base. You obviously can't give it B because that has gone. So just to remind us, that's gone. And so is that. So A or C? I think we'll put it in C as it's the furthest away. And what does it do for us? Well, it allows us to now reveal all flights every time they take off. So we're going to reveal this one and the next two. It also allows us to throw one extra dice for one interceptor against a Soviet bomber flight. So that's good. Next, launch next Soviet flight. Well, if you remember from the scenario, they're going to launch two. So E and F. There we go. We're going to use the deck. And flight E is leaving Ambarchik. I hope that's how you pronounce it. So we throw a D6 to find out its primary target. They throw a 2, and a 2, if we can see it, is D. Seattle. So 7 and D. There it is. And this one, let's tidy them up, there we go. Magadan. And that's targeting. Number 4. Q, I think that is. Yeah, Q. Phoenix. 9. Q. There we are. And these get shuffled back into the deck, ready for next time. There we go. Cuba, by the way, is left out of the deck because it's not in the conflict yet. If we draw a random event which brings them into it, we then place their flights here and draw or roll to see which is their target. So, we've launched next Soviet flight. Move all Soviet bombers. Now, I'm not sure if we do the detection now because of this or wait until it says so on the phase. I think we'll wait. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. So we're going to move. They can move 1 hex per turn and they're trying to find the shortest distance to their primary target. And I tend to do these alphabetically so I don't forget them. You can do them top to bottom, left to right, whichever way you want really. But A is going for R, which is Los Angeles. So they'll move and use the shortest distance. They will try and avoid cities and SAM sites, but I don't want to move there because being impartial, that's anchorage, and they can launch their long-range interceptors. So let's just check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It doesn't matter. So we're moving here. They're being canny. B is going down here to Washington. So they're going to move straight across. And these are going to move down. They're going for I as well. They're not moving there because they can be attacked. I think that's fair and makes sense. D is moving to Edmonton, so it's just going to move straight down. There are no cities around, no. Normally would get revealed because it's on the do line, but of course we've got the aerial early warning. E is going for Seattle over here. So they can't avoid going past Anchorage, so they'll move here. And F is going towards Phoenix, which is here. Oh, no, sorry, where are we? Phoenix here. So they'll just move across. And there we are, that's the movement. Now we're going to reveal, it says here, Soviet bomber detection. So yes, we've placed all the Soviet bombers in a cup and we're going to pick 3 for each flight. So I'll try and get, there's 2 and another one. So we've got a Tu-95, we've got a Tu-16 and another Tu-16. That's that one. And we do the same for these 2. We can, even though they're nowhere near the do line because of that airborne early warning. So 3 for E. There we go, there's 3 and 3 for F. I can get through without looking. There we are. What we got here? M4, Tu-16 and another M4. We've got to remember there are a couple of flights so far I've got these Tu-95 kilos which have a range of 0 and 1, so they can actually bomb from 1 hex away from their target. M4, Tu-16, Tu-16. Right, so these are all 0 range. That's that. Next, US, UK and Canada interceptors. Is there anything that we can intercept? Well, no, because these are being crafty and moving, not going over cities. So, no, that's more than 1 hex away. Nothing around here. So no luck there. Next, US and UK air defences, same thing, 0 range. Maybe next, well, they'll see how they do. Same up there and down here, of course. Soviet bombers attack. They're not over their targets yet. So no. US and UK launch bombers. Right, we can launch up to 3 bombers. We can launch 3 from the same airbase, or whatever combination we want really. Unfortunately, we can't launch the V bombers because in the scenario it says they're not allowed to be launched in the first turn, so that's out. So what I think we'll do is we'll launch the ones in Anchorage because they're the nearest to the Soviet cities. So they'll join those bombers there. That's that. Move all US and UK bombers. Some have got a movement of 2, some have got a movement of 1, so we'll move the Vulcan first. Yeah, we'll move it here, I think. This can move 2, so 1, 2. We've got to be aware of these. Remember, these are hexes with A, D and a number in them. That's air defence. If we move into that, the Soviets may well get an SA-2 SAM site there. And here's a case in point. If we move straight up, so we're going to move these 3. These have a movement of 1. We're going to move them here. And these are both B-58s, which have a movement of 2. So we're going to move them 1, 2 there. These 2 B-52s are going to move 1 over Edmonton. There we are. Soviet and Cuba, well, Cuba's not in. Soviet interceptors. Well, the only interceptor they've got with a range of 1 is this one in Moscow. So no. SA-2 air defences. No, again, the only one they've got at the moment is in Moscow because the Allies are being canny as well. US and UK bombers attack. No, we're not over any cities yet. Next turn I think we will be. Yeah. US submarine. We can move the George Washington. We can either move it, fire, or stay where we are. But I think we've got to move, because to fire our Polaris missiles, we've got to be in one of these hexes with the Polaris missile. So we move there, but it can only move twice in the whole game. So that's one of them gone. And the Polaris missiles have a range of 3, so we've got to move in a bit. So that's that. Reset interceptors, well, we didn't use any. And we'd move them across into the next box. Check for end game. No, that is it. That is the end, I believe, I hope I've done it right, of the turn. So we'll try another turn. So back to the top, draw random event card. Be lucky. Soviet maximum effort. Launched 2 Soviet flights during phase 2 of this turn only. Well, that means they're going to launch the rest of their flights. It's going to get a bit bonkers, because they can launch 2 per turn anyway, and another 2 from the card. So that's not good. Launch next Soviet flights. So here they come. The first one, G, is coming from Leningrad, and it's targeting 1. B. So we put that up there. There's Leningrad. But B has already been annihilated. So what we're going to do now, if I can zoom in, I don't think we'll see it very well, but there we are. So there's a little table there. And we look up the city the flight came from, and we throw on that line and see if we can get a secondary target. So there, here we go. It's Leningrad, and we throw a 4, and a 4 is C. So they are now going for C. Move out a little bit. See how we go. Might have to zoom about a bit. Right, that's that flight. Let's do the others. H is going from Yakutsk. Right. And it is targeting number 3. And number 3 is E, I think. Yeah, E. So let's move out. There we go. A little bit more. Right. So number 11 and E. Edmonton, I think. Yeah. Right up there though. I. Flying from Vladivostok and targeting number 3 again, which is, oh dear, poor old Greenland, that's C. That's up there though. And our last one, Sverdlovsk. Apologies to our Russian friends, but they're targeting number 1, B again, but that's already gone. So 4, B. So we roll this time. Just pop that up there, number 4. We roll on this line and see what their secondary target is. It is number 5. And number 5 is P. Oops. Sorry about that. Omaha. Here. There we go. We don't need to shuffle these in because that's all the flights gone. But we can also now reveal them, even though they've got to move first, I think. So we'll move them and then we'll reveal them all. There'll be no secrets. A is going to R, so that'll move across here. B and C are going down to Washington DC, so they'll move out to be in a direct line down. D is going for E, which is Edmonton, so they're just going to come straight down. Flight E is coming down to Seattle, so again just straight. Oh, hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No, it can't. It's got to move down. So that's going to be attacked by interceptors in Anchorage. F is going for Phoenix. So they will move out 1 to be in line. No, they won't. They will move straight down. So if a Soviet flight also ends its turn on an Allied bomber or Vicky Verky, it is then revealed, but it's not going to make much difference because of this. So G is now going for Gothab or Gothab. So that will just move in line. H up there is going for Edmonton, so that will just move in line. I again is going for Gothab. It's a bit of a ways. Hope I read that one right. There we go. J is now going for Omaha. So that'll just move in. And that's all the turns. So next it is Soviet bomber detection. We can detect the whole lot. So we'll do that as quick as poss. Flight G, we need 3. There's 2, 3. Oh, another Tu-95 kilo. It's got a range of 1. I must remember, I keep saying, you know me. H. There's 4. Chuck that one back. Tu-95, Tu-16 and an M4. They're all range 0. 2 more. There's 3. M4, M4, Tu-95. But that's not the kilo, that's just a range 0. Last one. There's 2. Oh, another kilo. Right. There we go. They've all been identified. Now, next. Interceptions from us lot. Sorry about that. I had to stop recording for a while there. So where were we? It is US, UK and Canada interceptors. Well, we've got this flight here, this Soviet flight here, which is 1 hex away from Anchorage, so we can send interceptors out to that. But I also noticed that there are a couple of flights next to Gothab, so we'll have to try and sort them out as well. Those flights are 1 hex away, so we'll have to use long range, but we can't use all our interceptors for long range. There is a rule which says you can only use up to half of those interceptors for long range attacks. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8. So only 4 of those are available for long range attacks. Now E is going after Seattle, whereas these 2 are going after Washington. So I think we'll use the 4 we are allowed to use on here and use the others when this passes through anchorage, which it's going to. Okay, so again, you may play this completely different, which, as I always say, is the beauty of solo games. So 2 for those and 2 attacking those. Nothing else. Okay. The attack value on these F102s is 4. And checking up here, B and C flights do not have any defensive modifiers. So we need 4 or more. Let's see if we can knock out some of these bombers on their way to Washington, DC. So we'll do this one first. Oh, not bad, not bad. That is 2 hits. And we'll look at the other one quick. No, nothing for that one. That gets through. So 2 hits for this one. So over here, I'm not sure if we can see it, but we'll zoom in. Whoops. There we are. Up here, there's a little line of Soviet aircraft, and it reads from left to right. So Tu-16 is destroyed before the Tu-95 Kilo, and so on. So we've got 2 hits on flight B, and they are all Tu-16s. So didn't really matter, but I thought I'd show you that anyway. So let's come back out. There we are. So over here we've got 2 Tu-16s which we're going to remove from flight B. 1, 2. Just tidy up. And these are removed from the game completely. These interceptors now go back to the refuel box, but as we use them for long range, they are going to sit in this part here which says long. And at the end of the turn they will move here, and the end of the following turn will move back into ready. That, I think, is that. US and UK air defences. No, nothing in range. This is a range of 0. Looks like they're going to bypass that. Soviet bombers attacks. There are no bombers over their targets, so that's lucky. Edmonton, I think, is the nearest target to be bombed. So we move on. US and UK launch bombers. If you remember, we can launch 3 bombers. So I think what we'll do is we'll launch the rest of the V bombers and the one from Omaha. Move that, it's getting a bit, that's it. So Omaha here. Just come out a bit. There we are. And the 2 V bombers in London town. Next, move them. Well, this is good. We're going to move these bombers, and they're going to be bombing, if they can, Ambarchik. So we'll move those. They can move 2, but we're only going to move them the 1. These will move up 1. They have a movement of 1. Yes. This other B-58 is going to bomb Murmansk. We'll move the Vulcan up here. These B-52s will move up. This B-52 will move there. And that's it. Soviet interceptors. Well, we've got 2 lots of bombers bombing cities there. Now the Soviets can use as many interceptors as there are bombers. They don't have a choice. So here we've got 2 bombers. So they are going to be using a couple of MiG-19s to try and stop us. And here, just the one. Now the good thing is, the B-58s have a defence modifier of -1, so we can take 1 off the MiG-19 dice rolls. They've got to throw 4s or more, and they do that now. So for this one, 2 dice, -1s, 4 or more. Oh no, the Soviets aren't lucky. We take 1 off of that, that's 3. They've completely missed. These, by the way, go back into the normal refuel rearm box of the Soviet interceptors over there. So that's good. This one is attacking, but again has a -1, needs a 4 or more. No! Luck is changing. That goes back into the rearm box as well. SA-2 air defences. Well, there aren't any. US and UK bombers attack. Right, here we go. We've got 2 B-58s there, which need a roll of 3. That's their attack, just to remind you there, if we can see that. Attack of 3. We're going to throw 2 dice, 3s or more. We only need the 1 to hit. Oh, look at that. Lovely. So I'm afraid Ambarchik has been bombed. And we draw one of these. See what sort of, see the victory points. We get a 5. We try this one now. We need another, whoops, a 3 or greater. Just the 1 die though. Oh, look at that. Excellent. So we'll choose another one. And we get, oh, so 1d6 as well. For Murmansk. So we'll throw a 1d6. 3. So we'll stick one of these little things on there to remind us as well, which is the same as this one. Right, these bombers now return to an air base of our choice, as long as it's not full up. So I think we'll return them to Anchorage up the top there, as this is the nearest one to the Soviet cities. So all we do is take them and pop them back. Ready for next turn. Oh, do you know what? I've forgotten to move our Vulcan bombers. Let's move those. There we are. Don't think I've forgotten anything else. Moved all those, didn't I? Yep, sorry about that. US submarine. We're going to move that up so it's in a better position to attack with its Polaris missiles. That's its movements over. And we're going to move it there. There we are. Whoops, bit skewy. There we go. Reset interceptors. The long-range F-102s now move down to here, and the Soviet MiG-19s are back ready. Check for endgame. Oh, I didn't put our total on. We've got a total of 8. So there we are, forgetting things. That, I think, is the end of the turn. And you know what? I think we'll leave it there. It's been quite a long video with the setup and everything. Once you get going again, this is a very quick game to move through the turns. They're taking a bit of time with me because I'm having to explain what's going on. But again, I hope the gist of the game is coming across. So, the Soviets took first blood with Thule, but the Americans and her allies have come back and bombed 2 of the Soviet cities. So we'll see what happens next time. So I hope that's been of help. So this has been part 1 of a playthrough of Red Menace, World War III in 1959, 2nd edition. Game designed by Brent Ward and the full retail game published by Battlespace Games. This is the print and play version and is available for you to download from wargamevault.com. If you have enjoyed it, and I hope you have, please consider subscribing to the channel, pushing the like button of the video and the bell. That'll tell you when I upload other stuff. If I've made mistakes, which if you know me, that's more than likely, leave a gentle comment. So it helps me and anybody else who may well be interested in this game, or just to say you've enjoyed it. That'll be nice. And share the video. All the above, as I say, helps the little channel no end. And as always, a big thank you to my subscribers. Thank you very much. And if you really like what I do, you can now show your appreciation by buying me a coffee. Doesn't cost much. And believe me, it really helps the little channel to keep uploading content. If that's of interest to you, there's a link in the description, and thank you. So we'll see what happens in part 2 of the playthrough. There's a heck of a load of bombers coming down. Let's see if our interceptors can deal with them, and we'll see if our bombers can get some more victory points for us. So until then, you take care, be safe, and goodbye.